Is it possible that ancient Chinese language reveals that Jesus is God? And what God did the Chinese worship in ancient times? First, few words about history of the Chinese language. Chinese is not an alphabetic language like most written languages in the world. It is a language of pictures, a written form that uses characters to represent concepts. As author and physician, Adeline Yenma said in her book, Chinese Cinderella, "The written syntax of her native tongue is unique. Chinese is a pictorial language, not a phonetic one. Our words come from images. The meaning of many characters is subtle and profound. Other words are poetic and even philosophical. Chinese is believed to be the world's oldest written language, with origins extending back beyond 2000 BC. The Encyclopedia Britannica suggests that language began to develop in the early 2nd millennium BC. The earliest known inscriptions date from the Shang or Yin dynasty, 18th, 12th century BC. But by then it was already a highly developed system, essentially similar to its present form. This places the origin of ancient Chinese syntax very close to the time of the dispersion from the Tower of Babel, recorded in Genesis 11. Now let's embark on a fascinating journey to discover what the Chinese characters and language might reveal to us about the Bible and the events written within its pages. Time when Jesus was born. Now we live in the year 2025 AD, and Chinese history stretches back 2,500 years before Jesus was born. Chinese, alongside Hebrew, is one of the oldest known languages, with written records dating back over 3,000 years to around 1200 BC for Chinese and 1000 BC for Hebrew. So Chinese history has an unbroken span of 4,500 years. Confucianism and Buddhism began around 500 BC. Taoism started around 600 BC. So the big question is, what about those 2,000 years? Before Confucianism and Buddhism and Taoism, what did the Chinese people believe in? What makes this truly fascinating is the existence of exceptionally well-preserved historical records. First 2,000 years of their history, the Chinese people worshipped a singular supreme god, and not many dozens or millions of deities. They worshipped a god by the name of Shang. When you read historical records, Shang has exactly the same character, nature, and power as the God of the Old Testament. But while the Hebrew people called him Yahweh, the Chinese people from the beginning called him Shang, the king that lives above, the Most High God. Some of them called him as Tian or as Shang Tian. Notice how the word Tian is written. Everything that is big, that is Da. He is bigger than them. He is the Most High. Also, the Old Testament calls him the Most High God. China's greatest historian is often considered to be Sima Qian, a historian during the Western Han dynasty, circa 145-86 BC. He is best known for his monumental work, the Records of the Grand Historian, which covers the history of China from the mythical Yellow Emperor to his own time. In his classic historical records, he recorded of a king called Huangdi, or the Yellow Emperor. Huangdi is supposed to be the originator of all Han people, Han Chinese. He lived around 2400 BC to 2500 BC. That means right from the beginning. Sima Qian recorded that Huangdi actually built an altar in Taishan, which is the mountain in Shandong province, to worship Shangdi God, the one supreme god. Sima Qian also recorded, in his historical records, a comment by a Han dynasty scholar. The comment was, Shangdi is another name for Tian. The spirits do not have two lords. In other words, the Lord your God is one. There is much similarity here to what is said in the Bible in Deuteronomy 6:4. There is also a song found in the collected statues of the Ming dynasty. The lyrics feature the following words. Of old in the beginning there was the great chaos, without form and dark. The 5 planets had not begun to revolve, nor the 2 lights to shine. In the midst of it, there existed neither form nor sound. You, O spiritual sovereign, came forth in your sovereignty, and first did separate the impure from the pure. You made heaven, you made earth, you made man. All things became alive with reproducing power. Notice the order: you make heaven, you make earth, you make man. This sounds exactly like the text in the Bible, specifically in Genesis 1:1. Now let's see what Genesis 1:1 is saying. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and the darkness covered the deep waters, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Genesis continues by telling how God separated light from the darkness and the land from the waters. Then he created trees and plants. After that he created fish and birds and beasts of the field. And then he created man. Genesis also says that all were given reproducing power to produce after their own kind. As history shows us, all of this happened and was written long before the worship of Taoism, Buddhism, or Confucianism. Long before there were any temples built for the worship of these idols. For 2,000 years, the Chinese people worshipped a singular, supreme, sovereign God. God, who is the creator of heaven and earth, and his name is Shang, who has the same nature, character, and power of Yahweh God of Old Testament. Nobody knows when Chinese writing originated, but most would agree that it probably came about around 2500 BC. Centuries before the Egyptians built their pyramids, the Chinese had already developed writing. With this ability to write came the means to document history. Once people were able to document history, several global events emerged that everyone could potentially remember. Around 2500 BC, you have events like the Flood and the Tower of Babel. What other events might people, if they were alive at the time and if these events were true, have remembered? It's evident that a flood covering the entire earth would be unforgettable. Similarly, an event like the Tower of Babel, which scattered people across the earth and gave rise to different languages, would undoubtedly leave a lasting impression. This is where it gets interesting.